Earlier this week, we saw a monument of Western civilization burn furiously for hours. The Cathedral Notre Dame de Paris, the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, it caught on fire. And amazingly, it didn't completely burn to the ground. It appears that most of it was intact in store. You had burnt timber and most of the roof fell, but its structural integrity remained. And there was a tinge of sadness when I saw it burning. But at the same time, there was a certain kind of tragicomedy feeling that I had, that there was this tragic thing happening before me, but it was also something good. And what I mean by that is this burning of Notre Dame was this metaphor of what's happening in the Western world. I mean, Notre Dame is a beautiful church, and France and the West has become unbelieving, has become sinful, has become apostate, and the burning of this church represents what's happening. It's a small-scale metaphor for the West, and that's okay because God does that. God destroys His holy stuff, His holy people, when they're not acting very holy. And so we can take comfort in this. We can rejoice knowing that God is going to burn this stuff down to the ground, and He's going to resurrect it and make something greater. And one of the things that I noticed was the reactions from Christians were varied. Of course, most Christians were saddened to see it, and that was basically the extent. Isn't this tragic? Isn't this sad? Yes, it was. It's a beautiful church, and it is sad to see it go, especially with that much history behind it. But often with that response comes pray for the people of France, pray for the Parisians, pray for their comfort. I mean, this follows any kind of tragedy we see. And I don't think this reflects adequately in what's going on. We should pray not just for their comfort, but for their repentance. I don't even know if we should pray for their comfort. We should pray for their repentance. They should be unsettled. They should be uncomfortable because God's trying to get their attention. The other response that I've seen is from radical traditionalists who essentially want to reinstate another crusade, the Deus Vult crowd. And this response is foolish in a different way by wanting to marshal military power to strike back at the Muslim world is, I guess you could say, putting the cart before the horse, in the sense that they also are not seeing the West's own sinfulness, that these things are a just reprisal from a just God. They simply want to bear the sword without any kind of repentance. And so they could do that, but they're not going to have much success. And then others have just outright condemned Christians for acknowledging this as a kind of judgment. And even if it was a non-intentional, if it was an accidental fire or whether it was intentional, I don't think it really matters. Why? Because God is providential. So even if it was an accident, God was superintending it. Even if it was purposeful, God is superintending that. And I saw a Reformed man who I respect otherwise, but I could not believe that he posted this. And he said, "I wish we could do this without the judgment," which is a remarkable statement. I wish we could do this without the judgment. That statement totally encapsulates the Christian mind. This is a conservative Christian Reformed man who essentially was one of the Israelites at Moab when there was the sexual immorality going on, and the Israelites are standing around crying and not doing anything. And then when somebody comes along and says, we got to stop this, and look at this judgment, look at these plagues. And then Phineas comes along and he stops it. That is scandalous to these people. For somebody to say, I wish we could do this. I wish we could just cry about Notre Dame burning to the ground and not mention that this is judgment. Not mention that this is an act of God, that God is trying to get our attention. It's just amazing to me. It's just, it's barbaric and unrefined and insensitive to say that's judgment, but it is. Make no mistake about it. This is judgment. God is judging us. And so this reminds us of our own need to confess.